The fluorescent lights of Grandview Mall buzzed overhead as 12-year-old Ethan Miller stood frozen outside the gleaming storefront of Apex Electronics, the most prestigious tech retailer in the city. His worn sneakers, held together by duct tape and hope, seemed to anchor him to the polished marble floor. Inside, sleek smartphones and cutting-edge laptops gleamed under strategic lighting, each price tag representing more money than his father made in a month. Ethan clutched a crumpled $20 bill in his sweaty palm, money he'd saved from odd jobs around their trailer park, collecting bottles, mowing lawns with a rusty push mower that belonged to their elderly neighbor. Today was his father's birthday, and Ethan had a plan. He didn't need an expensive gift, just something small, something to show his dad that he noticed how hard he worked, how he never complained despite the double shifts at the factory and the weekend cleaning jobs. A simple phone case would do. Maybe one of those cheap ones from the bargain bin he'd spotted last week. Taking a deep breath, Ethan pushed through the glass doors. Immediately, he felt the weight of judgment. A security guard's eyes tracked him, and he noticed a saleswoman whisper something to her colleague while glancing his way. His threadbare jacket, 2 sizes too small and missing a button, suddenly felt like a spotlight. He walked carefully between the displays, trying not to touch anything, heading toward the back where the accessories lived. That's when he saw them, the clearance phone cases, marked down to $15. Perfect. His heart lifted as he picked up a simple black case, durable and practical, just like his dad. As Ethan made his way to the register, clutching his chosen gift, he didn't notice the impeccably dressed man observing him from the second-floor office that overlooked the sales floor. Marcus Chen, 42, CEO of Apex Electronics' Western Division, had stopped by this location for a surprise inspection. What he saw was a shabby kid, clearly out of place, probably a shoplifter. Marcus had built his career on attention to detail and protecting profit margins. He picked up the internal phone and made a call. Downstairs, Ethan placed the phone case on the counter, smoothing out his $20 bill with pride. The cashier, a young woman named Sophie, smiled warmly at him. But before she could ring up the purchase, a heavy hand landed on Ethan's shoulder. He turned to find the security guard, a hulking man named Derek, looming over him. "I need you to come with me," Derek said loudly, his voice carrying across the store. Other customers turned to stare. Ethan's face flushed hot. "But I'm buying this? I have money," he protested, holding up his bill. "Sure you do," Derek said sarcastically. "We've been watching you since you came in. Empty your pockets." Ethan's eyes began to sting. "I didn't take anything. I just want to buy this case for my dad's birthday." By now, a small crowd had gathered. Ethan saw people recording on their phones, whispering, assuming the worst. Sophie the cashier looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. Then Marcus Chen himself descended the stairs, his expensive shoes clicking authoritatively against the floor. He had the confident air of someone who'd never been questioned, never been poor, never understood what it meant to save for weeks to afford a $15 gift. Marcus surveyed the scene with cold eyes. "What's the problem here?" Derek straightened. "Potential shoplifter, sir. Came in looking suspicious, been handling merchandise." Ethan's voice shook as he spoke. "I'm not stealing. I saved this money. I just want to buy a birthday present for my father." Marcus looked at the boy's clothes, the duct-taped shoes, the desperation in his eyes, and made a snap judgment based purely on appearance. "Young man, this store caters to a certain clientele. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at a discount store down the street. Derek, please escort him out." The words hit Ethan like a physical blow. Around him, people murmured. Some looked sympathetic, but no one spoke up. Tears threatened to spill, but Ethan blinked them back. He'd learned early that crying solved nothing. Instead, something hardened inside him. He looked directly at Marcus Chen, memorizing his face, the arrogant tilt of his chin, the expensive watch on his wrist. When Ethan spoke, his voice was quiet but steady, with a strange certainty that made even Marcus pause. "You'll regret this." Marcus actually laughed, a short dismissive sound. "I don't think so, son. Derek, now please." As the security guard's grip tightened on his arm, Ethan added, "My father is coming to pick me up. He'll be here in 5 minutes." It sounded like a threat, though from a 12-year-old boy in taped-together shoes, it seemed absurd. Marcus waved dismissively and turned away. Ethan was led to the exit, his birthday gift still on the counter, his $20 bill still in his hand, his dignity in tatters on the floor. Ethan sat on the bench outside Apex Electronics, his phone clutched in trembling hands, tears finally streaming down his face. He'd texted his dad simply, "Done shopping. Can you pick me up now?" He couldn't bring himself to explain what had happened, couldn't bear to add one more burden to his father's shoulders. David Miller had been through enough. Ethan's mother had left when he was 4, deciding that poverty wasn't the adventure she'd signed up for, disappearing with a sales manager from her office and leaving no forwarding address. David had raised Ethan alone, working brutal hours, sacrificing everything, always making sure his son had food, clothes, school supplies, even if it meant David went without. Ethan wiped his eyes roughly. Inside the store, he could see Marcus Chen speaking with staff, probably congratulating himself on removing an undesirable element. The injustice of it burned. He'd done nothing wrong, but he'd been judged, convicted, and sentenced based purely on his appearance, on the economic circumstances he couldn't control. 5 minutes later, a vehicle pulled up to the curb. But it wasn't his father's usual ride, the battered 15-year-old Honda Civic with the failing transmission and rust spots. Instead, a sleek black Mercedes S-Class slid silently to a stop, its pristine paint job reflecting the afternoon sun. Ethan stood up, confused, thinking it must be someone else. Then the driver's door opened, and his father stepped out. But this wasn't the father Ethan knew, not the exhausted man in factory-stained work clothes. David Miller wore an immaculate charcoal suit that fit him perfectly, a crisp white shirt, and a silk tie. Ethan's mouth fell open. "Dad?" David's expression was gentle but concerned. "Hey, buddy, you okay? You sounded upset in your text." Behind David, 2 more vehicles pulled up, a Mercedes G-Wagon and an Audi R8. From them emerged 4 people, 3 men and 1 woman, all dressed in expensive business attire, all moving with the quiet confidence of serious power. Ethan recognized the look from seeing Marcus Chen earlier, but these people had something more, a deeper authority. "Dad, what's going on? Whose car is this? Why are you dressed like that?" David knelt down to his son's level, right there on the sidewalk, expensive suit and all. "Ethan, I need you to tell me what happened. Why were you crying?" The whole story poured out, the saving, the gift, the accusation, the humiliation, Marcus Chen's dismissal. As Ethan spoke, he watched his father's jaw tighten, a rare anger flashing in his usually kind eyes. When Ethan finished, David stood slowly, placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder, and turned to the 4 people who'd accompanied him. "It seems we have a situation that requires immediate attention." The woman, elegant in a navy suit, nodded crisply. "Shall we, sir?" David looked at his son. "Ethan, I need you to wait here for just a few minutes. There's something I have to handle. Then I'll explain everything, I promise." Ethan nodded, too shocked to speak. He watched as his father, the man he thought he knew completely, walked toward the entrance of Apex Electronics with the bearing of someone who owned the world. The 4 others flanked him like a presidential detail. Through the glass, Ethan could see the moment the store staff noticed them, the sudden straightening of postures, the widening of eyes. Inside the store, Marcus Chen was reviewing inventory reports on a tablet when he sensed a change in atmosphere. The casual chatter of customers had stopped. He looked up to see 5 people entering, moving with purpose, and his trained executive eye immediately assessed expensive tailoring, probably combined wealth of several $1,000,000 in the room. These were serious players. The man in front, tall and commanding despite humble features, looked vaguely familiar, but Marcus couldn't place him. Then Sophie, the cashier, gasped audibly, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "That's David Miller." The name meant nothing to Marcus until one of his own senior managers, Tom Rodriguez, rushed from the back office, his face pale. "Mr. Chen, that's David Miller, the David Miller." Recognition hit like ice water. David Miller, founder and majority shareholder of MillerTech Industries, one of the largest technology manufacturing conglomerates in the nation, with a personal net worth estimated at over $3 billion. David Miller, who was famously reclusive, who rarely appeared in public, who ran his empire from behind the scenes. David Miller, who had revolutionized semiconductor manufacturing and held patents on technology that virtually every electronics company, including Apex, relied upon. Marcus felt his stomach drop as David approached. The four others revealed to be MillerTech's chief legal officer, chief operating officer, chief financial officer, and head of corporate communications. This wasn't a casual visit. This was a deployment. David stopped directly in front of Marcus, his expression neutral, but his eyes cold. "I believe you just escorted my son out of this establishment." The color drained from Marcus Chen's face as the full weight of his catastrophic error crashed down on him. His mind raced through the implications: personal, professional, corporate. Apex Electronics didn't just sell MillerTech products. They were one of MillerTech's largest retail partners, with contracts worth hundreds of millions annually. Marcus's own position, his career, his reputation, everything suddenly hung by the thinnest thread. "Mr. Miller, I didn't know," Marcus stammered, then immediately realized how that sounded, that he'd have treated the situation differently if he'd known the boy was rich. David's expression hardened. "That's precisely the problem. You didn't know, and it shouldn't have mattered." By now, the entire store had gone silent, every customer, every employee watching the scene unfold. Phones were out, recording. This would be on social media within minutes. David continued, his voice quiet but carrying through the space. "My son came into your store with honestly earned money to buy a birthday gift for his father. He was profiled, accused, humiliated, and removed based purely on his appearance. In front of dozens of witnesses, you made a judgment about his character, his worth, his right to be treated with basic human dignity." Marcus tried to speak, but Sarah Chen, MillerTech's chief legal officer, stepped forward. "Mr. Chen, I'm sure you're aware of the partnership conduct clause in your contract with MillerTech Industries. Section 12, paragraph 4 specifically addresses discrimination and corporate values alignment." Marcus was aware, painfully aware. That clause gave MillerTech the right to terminate partnerships if a retailer's conduct violated their corporate values, which explicitly included dignity and equal treatment for all customers. Tom Rodriguez, Marcus's own senior manager, couldn't stay silent. "Sir, I tried to tell security earlier, but I was in the back office. I saw what happened on the cameras. The boy did nothing wrong. He was polite, careful, clearly just trying to make a purchase. The betrayal from his own staff cut deep, but Marcus knew Tom was protecting himself, rats fleeing a sinking ship." David turned to address the gathered crowd, customers and employees alike. "I built my company on a simple principle, that innovation and success should benefit everyone, not create barriers between people. I grew up poor, very poor. I know what it's like to walk into a store and feel the weight of judgment, to be treated as less than human because your clothes aren't right or your shoes are worn." He gestured toward the door, where Ethan was visible through the glass, still sitting on the bench. "That boy out there is the most important person in my life. He doesn't know the full extent of our financial situation because I've chosen to raise him with humility, with understanding of what most people face every day, with empathy. He does odd jobs and saves his money because I've taught him the value of work and earning. And today, your CEO taught him a different lesson, that the world judges you by your appearance, that money determines your worth, that power excuses cruelty." Marcus felt his knees weaken. David continued, "I spend most of my time in our manufacturing facilities, working alongside our employees, understanding their lives. I live modestly because excess has never interested me. Every dollar I don't spend on myself goes into worker benefits, education programs, community investment. My son wears secondhand clothes because we donate to family shelters. He uses an old phone because children in our company's orphanage sponsorship program need technology more." The MillerTech CFO stepped forward with a tablet. "Mr. Chen, I'm authorized to inform you that, effective immediately, MillerTech Industries is suspending its partnership with Apex Electronics, pending a full review of corporate practices and culture. This affects approximately $240 million in annual contracts." Marcus actually swayed on his feet. "This would devastate Apex's quarterly numbers, possibly tank their stock price, and certainly end his career. But David wasn't finished. He turned to the gathered employees. To the staff of this store, this isn't your fault. Most of you had nothing to do with this decision. However, I'm offering any of you who are interested positions with MillerTech retail partners who understand that every customer, regardless of appearance or perceived wealth, deserves respect. Several employees immediately looked interested, already calculating their escape from the sinking ship. Sophie, the cashier, raised her hand tentatively. "Mr. Miller, I just want to say, I thought your son was sweet. I was going to ring up his purchase. I'm sorry I didn't speak up." David's expression softened slightly. "Thank you. That means something." He turned back to Marcus. "I don't enjoy this. I don't take pleasure in professional destruction, but I will not allow my son's humiliation to pass without consequence, not because he's my son, but because he represents every child, every person who's ever been judged unfairly." Then, in a gesture that stunned everyone, David bowed, a deep, formal bow of the kind that carries profound cultural weight. "I apologize on behalf of adults who have failed to create a world where children are treated with universal dignity." The four MillerTech executives followed suit, bowing in unison. It wasn't Marcus they were bowing to, it was the acknowledgement of failure, a collective recognition that the system had broken down. Marcus, instinctively, automatically, found himself bowing in return, though his bow was one of desperate apology, of career-ending recognition of catastrophic error. David straightened and walked toward the door without another word. Outside, he sat beside Ethan on the bench and finally, truly, smiled. "Ready to go home, buddy? We have a birthday to celebrate, and I believe you were trying to buy me a gift." Ethan looked at his father with new eyes, seeing both the man he'd always known and the titan he'd never suspected. "Dad, who are you really?" David pulled his son close. "I'm your father. Everything else is just details. Now let's go get pizza, and you can ask me anything you want." As they walked to the Mercedes, Ethan turned back to see through the store windows Marcus Chen standing alone. His career, his reputation, his future irrevocably changed by a single moment of prejudice, the weight of regret visible even from a distance. The boy's quiet warning had proved prophetic. "You'll regret this." Inside the car, as his father drove them toward home, toward normalcy, toward the life they'd carefully constructed together, Ethan finally asked the question that mattered most. "Why didn't you tell me?" David was quiet for a moment, navigating traffic, then answered with characteristic honesty. "Because I wanted you to understand the world as most people experience it, to develop empathy, to know that worth isn't measured in bank accounts. Today was horrible, and I'm sorry you went through it. But you learned something important. You learned how it feels to be judged unfairly, and that education, painful as it is, will make you a better man." Ethan considered this, then smiled slightly. "Did we just destroy that guy's entire career?" David sighed. He destroyed his own career the moment he chose cruelty over kindness. "We just revealed the consequences." As the Mercedes merged onto the highway, heading toward a modest neighborhood where a MillerTech billionaire lived in a simple ranch house, where a 12-year-old boy did his homework at a second-hand desk and learned that true wealth had nothing to do with money, the greatest lesson of all settled into Ethan's young mind. Power without compassion is tyranny, wealth without generosity is poverty, and success without humanity is ultimate failure. Behind them, in a gleaming electronics store that would soon close permanently, Marcus Chen learned those same lessons far too late. The cost of his education measured in everything he'd lost for failing to see the humanity in a boy with taped-together shoes and a $20 dream. The story spread across social media that night. Videos of David Miller's quiet confrontation and profound bow going viral, sparking nationwide conversations about dignity, respect, and the arbitrary cruelty of judgment based on appearance. And somewhere in a modest home, a father and son shared birthday pizza, the most expensive gift already given, not the technology empire or the vast wealth, but the lesson that how we treat the vulnerable defines who we truly are. This story explores themes of dignity, compassion, and the consequences of prejudice while delivering an emotionally powerful narrative about a father's love and a son's humiliation transformed into profound life lessons.